the grand jury in Ferguson, Missouri, has reached a decision. That decision is no reason to find charges against the police officer in the case of the death of the unarmed teenager in Ferguson, Missouri.
Monday night, I should say what happened Monday night, reminded me personally of another sensational moment in American media. When the O.J. Simpson verdict was announced, America gathered around its then archaic media devices to hear a decision and then watch to see when the riots would break out. Perhaps it's a sad commentary, not just on how far we haven't come, but also how the media was covering Ferguson and hoping to capture what everyone calls the money shot. Let's dig in on this and a whole lot more. A pleasure to welcome to MidPoint, award-winning broadcast journalist, best-selling author, including her first effort entitled Secrets Can Be Murder, What America's Sensational Crimes Tell Us About Ourselves. Most recently hosted the HLN network, Jane Velez-Mitchell joins us. Jane, it's a pleasure to have you on the show. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Ed.
It is, I think, fair to say, Jane, and I think you just heard my introduction there, that many times the media looks for it, we're sent out, but there was a lot of sensationalism on this case right from the very beginning, and all the tremendous, breathy hyperbole that went on. Even the folks, the legal folks there in Ferguson, had to take the media to task and say, you're part of the problem. I tend to think they were right.
I don't blame the media. I do say Dorian Johnson, who was with Michael Brown during this fateful encounter, really started it off on the wrong foot by suggesting they were two law-abiding citizens walking down the street and they were attacked by this police officer when nothing could be further from the truth. And what happened was that it was many days later that we started hearing about all the nuances in this story, namely that Michael Brown had been, according to authorities, and they provided videotape, involved in a robbery at a convenience store about 10 minutes before the deadly encounter, and that he had shoved a clerk. So he had shown aggression there. We didn't know that at first, and by that time the story had really taken off. But I will say this, on my new site, JaneUnchained.com, I just did a survey. 70% of those responding, and it's a broad cross-section of Americans, believe the grand jury made the right decision, and I have to agree with them, because there is racial profiling, Ed. There is police brutality. There are a whole bunch of problems. We do need more African Americans as police officers in communities that are primarily African American. But this was not the case to choose to make that point. This was a case with so many nuances, with so many gray areas, with this backstory of a robbery, with this struggle at the police car, which the officer testified to, and there is forensic evidence to back up his story, namely Michael Brown's blood on the inside of his police car. I believe this was the wrong case to choose, and I feel like our entire culture conspired to choose this case because, well, we all love conflict. That's what we're hooked on as a culture.
Isn't it also endemic, though, that when you talk about a number of the members of the media, we talk about it here, you've talked about it on shows before, it is our job to continue to use the word alleged, and we don't know, and we don't have all the facts. But even this morning, I heard somebody on one of the network morning shows say, oh, wait a minute, this should have been involuntary manslaughter. This was not an attorney. This was a co-host of a show. This is part of the problem, and this helps to drive a lot of the discourse and a lot of the anger.
Well, respectfully, Ed, news has changed so rapidly. It's gotten so fragmented. I started out years ago as a reporter who just reported who, what, when, where, why, how. And then suddenly I started giving my opinion. And you know what? It's a free country. That's what's great about America, is that we can give our opinions. It's messy, it's complicated, but it's better than living in China where they shut the internet down so that nobody can see the Hong Kong demonstrations.
And it is taken respectfully, Jane. I will say exactly that, because I give my opinions here as well. But we always need to make sure that we codify that and make sure that we make people know that we're not experts sometime, correct?
Absolutely. But you know what? If the experts were so fantastic, our country wouldn't be in the shape it is today. So I think that it's important to have voices that are not just inside the beltway and people who have all sorts of degrees and have memorized the names of all the cabinet members. We need to have other voices, people who are studying other things, because we're having the same conversations over and over again. And I personally believe that we've created these boxes that don't really apply anymore: liberal, conservative, Democrat, Republican. And, you know, so many Americans have rejected the entire thing and and say, you know what, it's broken. And we want new answers. You're not going to get new answers by talking to the same old people over and over again.
Trust me something, Jane, you're talking to somebody who rarely takes what says and what goes on inside the Beltway as fact. Trust me on that. Hang on just a second. We're going to get back to a second turn with Jane Velez-Mitchell after the break. And later this hour, the activist who was on the ground Monday night in Ferguson. It's coming up right here on MidPoint.